I'm Nick Kolakowski, host of Tech Connects, where we dig into all aspects of the tech industry and tech recruiting that matter to you. For our latest episode, I'm chatting with Harry Wang, Chief Growth Officer at Sonar. I want Harry's unique perspective on the impact of AI and vibe coding on engineers and software development. With AI-based coding becoming more prevalent, there's a lot of debate within tech right now over issues ranging from security concerns to the reliability of AI-generated code. For example, what can companies do to set guardrails around the use of large language models without accidentally stifling developer and engineer speed and creativity? So, a lot to chew on, and let's just jump in. Well, Harry, thank you again for being on. I really deeply appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Before we really jump into things, just for those who are listening who don't know what Sonar is and your role at it, would you mind just taking a few seconds, just breaking down Sonar's mission and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Sonar, we are Geneva headquartered company that's been in the business for 16 years. We fundamentally help developers build better software, build a safer software, and build it faster. And we do so by really actually delivering the insights to the developers in their workflows, in the IDs. And that insight may come in the form of detecting quality issues or surfacing vulnerabilities or surfacing dependencies risk, but providing this universally wherever they work. We also help the teams and also the DevOps, the leadership team as an organization to define the right standards in terms of the code and the safety and security and being able to enforce that standard so that you really actually can release a software in the CI/CD pipeline with a peace of mind. Right?
Okay.
So we're currently probably serving 28,000 paying customers, 400,000 organizations, and 7+ million developers around the world.
Yeah, that's a huge customer base, and it's obviously a super critical mission in terms of measurement and everything else related to that. And it makes me wonder. So obviously, developers and engineers all over the world and companies all over the world are actively working on how to integrate AI tools and functionality into their current workflows. And one thing that a lot of them seem to keep running into over and over again, at least based on my conversations with a lot of developers, is that they're trying to sort of demonstrate the tangible benefits and ensure that employees in all kinds of roles across the organization, even ones who aren't necessarily technical, are still kind of getting good use out of AI. And it makes me wonder. How can companies effectively demonstrate sort of those tangible benefits and ensure that kind of all employees are utilizing these tools and delivering them in a way that's measurable?
Yeah, it's always helpful as an organization, whenever there's a new technology, even new tools coming around, to take a measured steps, right? You kind of start. Actually, this is in fact what we're seeing with our customers. You start with a pilot project. In many cases, when 2.5 years ago, when Gen AI first came around, that becomes popular. Many companies, many of our customers actually having multiple pilots going on, trying out in our space. That means trying out the different code assistants, and that could be Copilot, that could be in many cases Copilot competitors, Codium, which is renamed into Windsurfer recently. They do this in parallel, and they getting the feedbacks from the developers, both in terms of how they finding the tools being helpful, but also they getting that really feedbacks from the organization, the CISOs, the security engineers, in terms of, hey, are they actually generating additional risk that from a governance standpoint, the company should take into account. And usually that runs in several months. And then what I've seen in Sonar space, right, generally the companies, our customers have passed that stage. They have moved on to embracing one of these, in many cases, actually multiple tools. And then they build the success examples. First of all, there are tons of developer surveying tools and productivity tools out there that can go out, show you, does it improve the productivities of the team? How's the individual developer feeling about the tool? Sentiments are good, or is a developer happy, right? So those are kind of feedback look goes in for decision making for the engineering organization to decide whether they want to adopt. But also actually for the other functions of the company, really actually demonstrate what are the natural sequence of steps that you can take on AI tools, for example, in marketing, in other functions, because you always kind of having this balance of the productivity, but also risk on the other side. You want to make a measured decisions.
Yeah, no, especially with hallucinations and everything like that. For people who aren't maybe necessarily technically inclined, you can see how problems could cascade if they just sort of blindly trusted like the output without putting in a workflow for verification. You hinted at an interesting point there, which is that in terms of the dissemination of AI and the strategies for that dissemination of AI within organizations, one thing that it also potentially hinges on is the cultivation of kind of internal AI champions and people who can go out there and say, like, this is how
Yeah.
we're going to play with integrating this. This is, how we're going to explore creating the benefits and so on. I guess, I mean, the question is for organizations like what, nobody wants more work on their plates. Nobody wants to be handed this thing and say, oh, now you're in charge of like a big swath of our AI strategy. But how can companies kind of cultivate those internal AI champions and those managers who are actually going to get a lot of what you said done? Because I mean, it's not what you're talking about is not a small thing for orgs, and it does take a lot of effort. I mean, how do you think companies should sort of organize themselves to push that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. From my experience, both in terms of Sonar, how we adopt different kinds of AI tools in our workplace, but also what I've seen from our customers, how they kind of gone through adopting both Sonar and the other AI tools in the developer environment. I can say there's no single champion, there's no single sponsor. They come from all different corners and different walks of that professional life, right? If you will. So in many cases, especially in the developer space, that's a grassroots adoption. It started with the grassroots adoptions. Developers use their own hobby tools on the side, they experimenting, they're trying, and they always figure out their own way of making themselves productive, right? And but also you have management. In many cases, they come from the developer experience organizations, the CTO office, where they actually have a formal proof of concept going on. Um, but from like when you get down to the other functions of an organization, oftentimes you have either the CEO or a leadership, someone in the leadership, to be the AI champion. They've seen what the other companies, the peer organizations are doing, and they feel this is a bigger moment, defining moment for how the workforce can look like, a workplace can look like in the future. They don't want to miss out the boat, right? And also they have that same conversation with the board often the time. So there are situations being reported out there who have gone to the much more aggressive in having mandate. Hey, actually, every single function, every single rules, the number one consideration is how can you do that with the AI before you think about having additional hirings, things of that nature, right? So that may be representing the extreme end of one posture. But then you have a situation like ours that we want to make a deliberate department by department decisions as a department owners, right? Does it make sense for us to introduce some more marketing automation capability with Gen AI as opposed to buying these traditional SaaS software doing certain type of things, right? And then that decision can be more further delegated, right? And then at the same time, lastly, you will have the providers, the service providers or the software providers like ourselves, having very active conversations, constructive dialogue with our customers. Hey, actually, big moment for the industry, for the technology. How can we work together to reshape, redefine the way of work? So this is the kind of all from influence from all different corners. And the trick is always really how do you set the standards and how do you really adopt a new practice and making that transition and making sure we do so with all the risks in mind, with the governance in mind. And that's, frankly, in our space, it was actually the primary value proposition Sonar brings. It's a trust and verified.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because in terms of what you were saying, a lot of the organizations that I've talked to in terms of adopting AI, kind of, they're all over that spectrum, as you were saying. And like some of them are doing that grassroots or that kind of ad hoc thing of having people bring their tools and practices into the org and trying to
Mm-hmm.
organically flow, which presents security issues, which is something
Yes.
I've talked to more than one cybersecurity person about freaking out. And then you've also got what you were saying, like the department by department, more kind of top down approach to it. And it makes me wonder, I mean, obviously understanding the complexity of what you just said and the complexity presented to companies with all this, that with that in mind, how does that change the, or how does that dictate kind of the approach to tailored training and support. I mean, I imagine that if a company is embracing that sort of grassroots ad hoc way of doing it,
Hmm.
it might be different than if for the top down studious
Yeah.
department by department way, but it might be the same. So I'm just, I mean, what's that
Yeah.
approach look like?
I think this comes down to at the individual level, we could build the muscle memories of how we can prompt the AI to give us the answer and give us the more accurate answers. And this type of a muscle memory takes some, accumulation of best practices. And sometimes it could be more formal than just actually, I'm telling my colleague, I could have just actually document those practice. People exchange prompts as if we used to exchange spreadsheets often the
Mhm.
time in the organization, right? So we are at like Sonar, we are at that point, but also from the management level, like a standpoint, that we come to a point. Hey, actually, maybe we should be doing more proactive training, right? This training will come into this is a live conversation. We are kind of thinking about what are the right classes. They're very good, a set of a collection of online classes. Some of them are paid, some of them free. So we're thinking about, paying for subscriptions for our employees to get access to those good training content, how to use AI LLMs effectively for different lines of work, right? But also there are situations where we could bring external speakers, internal champions, to your point, to share these in a more formal way with the rest of our organizations.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's such a green field that there's tons of approaches to it. And it also raises the question. Actually, I was talking to a couple of engineers from Microsoft in terms of because obviously they're between their OpenAI relationship and then Azure and everything else. Like they're busily focused on advocating for the integration of AI into processes and so on. And this isn't just a Microsoft thing, but it seems just kind of in general. As you're proceeding with this training, as companies are kind of figuring out their AI relationship and so on, something that pops up again and again, among developers and engineers, but also non-technical people within organizations, is that
Yep.
they're concerned about job replacement. I mean, and that's an inevitable kind of fear for employees to have. And it's one thing that I'm interested in is hearing how companies and managers are sort of approaching that concern and sort of assuring
Yeah.
people that this is about augmenting human
Yeah.
capabilities as opposed to just kind of wholesale job replacement, that it's about leveling up like your coding and making sure that you're faster as opposed to replacing you with a machine, because I mean imagine
Yeah.
that's also a huge concern. So I mean
Yeah. Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I can acknowledge the question. Frankly, I haven't, in my case, run into um, that conversation like in the real setting.
Mhm.
So first of all, like a Sonar, this is not like as an organization we want to adopt all sort of different AI tools, right? But it's mostly actually how do we around or how do we actually be more productive, but also actually how do we generate more value with these tools for our customers, for our company, for our shareholders.
Mhm.
And also, I read reports, but also constantly have conversations, similar conversation with our customers. I have not run into organizations in their IT and CTO organizations where there are active and really incoming conversations around job reductions,
Mhm.
workforce, reorganizing workforce, right? I think mostly at this point, stage in time, it's all around how do we move faster. This just reminds me of the internet days, right? When you're going through this kind of fundamental shift in the society, in the way of work, with exciting breakthrough in technology, in this case AI, there's just so much more possibility from a value creation standpoint as a society. So I think in the decision maker in their mind, that it's natural to think about how do we leverage these tools, how do we bring more values to our customers and our users, and generating more, and as a result, GDP will grow hopefully as a society, right? And then as opposed to thinking about how do I reduce my workforce because I got these awesome AI tools. Never say never. We may at some point come to that point, right? So knock on wood. Hopefully that does not happen this time. But that's not what I'm seeing happening right now.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like, I mean, it's not it almost seems like it's not a concrete fear. Like when I talk to developers and engineers, it almost seems like, I mean, they use these tools every day. And a lot of them say that, okay, like it's great for code snippets, it's great for summarization, it's great for
Yeah.
commenting within my code base, but I'm not worried that all of a sudden this thing is, because, it doesn't think like I think, it doesn't have context. It doesn't. So, I mean, but still, I mean, like I think it's a natural human thing to sort of have these concerns.
Yeah.
And the last question is, you mentioned in terms of software development and how kind of it's increasingly AI driven. What sort of, I guess the word I'm looking for here is accountability, where, now that we're seeing this merging, we're seeing this enhancement through AI of coding processes and other like tech functions, like within organizations, how do organizations ensure that the human stays kind of accountable in the process and in the loop? Because that's also another
Yeah.
kind of concern now that more and more code is being generated in this way.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, if I may just go back to your last question, add
Of
one
course.
more
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So I think it's important. And so we live through this, question all the time. Including I have two kids in the college age, and they're going through this like societal change, right? And
Yeah.
they have anxieties. So as what I've seen is for in the software development space, it's not so much about figuring out actually what certain jobs that you're being displaced as a developer. I'm being displaced by AI. It's really more about as how do we that's going to happen. How do we adapt at the individual level to work with that AI more effectively to get job done in faster, right? So in that process, there's a natural conversation which should happen at the organization level or to what certain aspect of the task are better handled by the AI and what's the role for software developers in this case. So we actually recently published an article that really around the role of AI in software development lifecycle in the future. And we also actually made acquisition in this space really. In my view, as the AI getting better, the agents, the systems are getting better for completing individual tasks, human software engineers are having a golden opportunity to move up the stack. In fact, every software engineer should be really thinking of himself as a software architect, right?
Yeah.
You suddenly have all the tools at your disposal to understanding a large code base very, very quickly. It could be actually a very legacy code base that nobody in the organization understands anymore, right? And you also have the tools at your disposal to complete individual writing this particular functions, generating unit tests, right? You have all these individual component things that can be completed by agents, can be completed by assistants. So we have the opportunity to really start thinking about having the mindset of an architect. How I'm actually designing a different service component, how they should be interact connecting. What is the security, vectors that we should be factoring into that design, right? So this was the golden task that the engineer have always wanted spending more time on that. And now they have the time to spend on those tasks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we made acquisition, last year called it Structure 101. We're integrating, we're launching those as a design architecture capability. That's really about bringing the design, the architectural insight to the developer to help them complete those higher level tasks.
Yeah.
Now, thank you for letting me to share that perspective.
Of course. Yeah.
So back to your question, really around the risk, right? So in vibe coding is now being talked about in all walks of work life.
I've heard that
It's no
popping up,
longer
yeah.
just actually individual professional software engineer writing high grade production quality software, but also you have finance folks, business analysts and including myself, I'm doing like a SQL query generation using AI tools all the time, right? So as we do that, there's a lot of risk. Now there's a lot of assignment, but becomes so easy. Everyone can get started very quickly. But the risk comes with that is the model behind those vibe coding tools could actually hallucinate and could actually generating the code. Not only generating code, that's risky, but it can actually introducing libraries, third-party dependencies that's either non-existent, that represent the future risk, right? But also could generating, importing a large collection of libraries that no one has evaluated, right?
Yeah.
So in that settings, whether it's a professional engineer, software engineers, or developers, or it's vibe coders like myself who haven't coded for a long time, it's hard to evaluate those third-party dependencies and libraries. And oftentimes the default action is really, well, okay, let's just focus on the outcome, right? That's okay for that individual, but it's not okay for a company, right? Mm-hmm. Your secrets, the company secrets, the tokens can get leaked out if for malicious entities who know how to actually embed those code into those third-party libraries. Or the PII information may suddenly actually landed in the wrong places. It can be a large disaster for the company from the customer fiduciary duty standpoint. So in that case, I do think the industry lacks a certain type of both governance, but also tooling right now to keep AI in check, right? From a governance standpoint, the good news is that organizations realize this one, and all organizations are actually acting like this is the CISOs, this is the board, and the GRC functions, the CTOs, and many times CEO get involved as well. Like really figure out what are the rules and what are the playbook to put in place. But from a tooling perspective, I can only speak for Sonar. Like from our standpoint, we are very much active at taking what we do good about code quality, code security for professional software development, but then also making that available in a way that integrated with the vibe coding tools, so that as the vibe coding becomes much more popular in the line for business, we are able to deliver to our customer the same peace of mind.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely a very fluid environment, but it seems that everybody is dedicated to advancing things and making sure that all AI tools and processes are integrated in a way that works for everybody. So cool. Well, thank you for the discussion. I think this was fascinating in terms of I think everyone who's listening to this is probably hopefully getting a more complete picture of AI and kind of had a training and integration and things like that, which is intensely valuable right now. So I appreciate the time. Well, that was an interesting discussion. Here are some quick takeaways as you proceed on your own AI journey. First, start with AI pilot projects and gather feedback. For tech professionals, begin AI integration with pilot projects. Run multiple parallel pilots with different AI tools, collecting feedback from developers and security teams. This helps assess productivity benefits and identify risks early, enabling iterative refinement before wider adoption. Second, cultivate diverse AI champions. Successful AI adoption is driven by champions from various roles. These can be grassroots developers experimenting with tools, or more formal initiatives from management and executive leadership. Understanding these diverse origins allows tech professionals to identify and collaborate with advocates at all levels to accelerate AI integration within a company. Third, focus on tailored training and prompt engineering. Prioritize tailored training and skill development in prompt engineering. Share best practices, exchange effective prompts, and formalize training through online courses or internal workshops. Cultivating this muscle memory for effective AI interaction, for want of a better term, is crucial regardless of the adoption strategy. Next, leverage AI for augmentation and upskilling. Rather than fearing job displacement, view AI as an opportunity to augment human capabilities. AI can handle routine coding tasks, freeing engineers to focus on higher-level architectural design and strategic problem-solving. Embrace AI to upskill and elevate your role within the organization. Last but definitely not least, implement robust governance and tooling for AI accountability. As AI tools become common, especially in low-code environments, ensuring human accountability and managing risks are critical. Establish clear governance frameworks and rules. Utilize tooling that integrates with AI coding processes to verify code quality and security, ensuring humans remain in the loop for critical evaluation and oversight. We covered a lot more during the discussion, so please give it another listen if you missed anything. We'll see you next time, and remember, Dice is your best resource to find the tech talent you need to fill your open roles. And for tech professionals, the best place to grow your tech career.